welcome everyone to the Light Beam Hour, and we're very excited here to have you with us as part of our online school with Light Beam Academy. This program is designed to provide a forum for masterful teachers to share their individual messages and wisdom, and to help people all over the world heal and awaken their lives. My name is Cecily MacArthur, for those of you who haven't met me before, and I am the creator and host of Light Beam Hour. So let me introduce myself a little bit. I am a spiritual teacher, coach, speaker, and writer, and my life mission is to help people connect with spirit and awaken their authentic selves, discover their true purpose, embrace change and responsible choices, and create the life of their dreams. Somebody's beeping there. So what I wanted to do just to also is to let you know about the process that we have going on is before we get this discussion going here, we're going to introduce our guest, and then we'll talk about the format of the show. So we are so excited to have Sandra Ann Daly on with us today. And she is a woman, amazing woman. You will meet her in a minute. After 30 years of abuse, she gave herself a gift. And that gift was the thought that there's got to be a better way to live. And her willingness to believe this thought, when it popped into her mind, she found it was key to unlock that door that stood between her and the life she never dared to imagine could possibly be hers. The opening of that door led her to the teachings of Mary Morrissey, and Sandra has been studying and practicing these teachings for more than 10 years now. And as a result of this study and practice, Sandra no longer calls herself a survivor of domestic violence. She now identifies herself as a liver of life, and a powerful example that patterns really can be broken. She uses her amazing story of growth and transformation to help others understand the principles that she learned from Mary Morrissey and effectively used to change her own life. She is now an author, poet, speaker, workshop creator and presenter, certified life mastery consultant, wife to a wonderful husband, mother to 2 beautiful children, and a grandmother of amazing young Mikey. Sandra feels that it is her purpose in this life to use her own knowledge and experience in support of those who have given themselves the gift of that thought, there's got to be a better way. It is her mission in life to stand in unlimited possibility and see the potential in others when they may be having difficulty seeing it for themselves. Sandra has written 2 books, Choose Your Universe, 5 Simple Steps to Creating the Life You Want, and Pop Your Paradigm, Neutralize Your Programming and Start Living Today. She can be found online at chooseyouruniverse.com. So, wow, we got a lot to talk about tonight, but before we get started, just wanted to talk about the format for the show. So all of your attendees, as you're coming in here now, remain muted on this call. At different times during the interview, I'll stop and ask for questions and comments. To participate, please hit 5 star, and I'll remind you of that on your phone, and that raises your hand, and then I can unmute you and identify you by the last 3 digits of your phone number. And we encourage you to ask questions. It's always great when people speak up, and we know when you ask a question, there's somebody else out there who wish they would ask that too. So please feel free to participate. We do enjoy that. So now I would like to move over to Sandra and ask Sandra to anything else you wanted to say to introduce yourself and get started, Sandy?
Oh, just call me Sandy. Thank you.
Okay.
So other than that, Sandra is the name on the book.
Well, it sounds very impressive.
Yeah. Other than that, I'm Sandy, spelled with an I.
Well, talking about your book and Pop Your Paradigm, because I love this book, Can you start by telling us more about what a paradigm is for people who might not even have used that word before?
Well, in my experience, that was 11 years ago that I gave myself the gift of that thought. I had always said, my life is the way it is because I was programmed as a child to believe that I had to live that way and that programming was more powerful than me. I had the belief that programming was more powerful than me. And that is paradigm. The paradigm is the subconscious programming that is so strong and so insidious, and it hides in the background of our mind, and it disguises itself as rational, logical thinking. Who do you think you are to think you could be able to do this kind of thing? It's like the way I envision it, and that's why for anyone who has seen the cover of the book, the way I envision the paradigm is like a tyrant that has it's like a giant tyrant with a thumb right above me, a huge thumb.
I love that great graphic. It really is.
Yeah, and so it's like there's this tyrant that gives me a little bit of leeway so I can live, move through my life. But the second I get outside my comfort zone, which is the paradigm is, call it what you want. The box, thinking outside the box means the same thing as thinking outside your paradigm. Call it programming, call it limiting beliefs, call it the box, call it paradigm. And I call it paradigm just because that's what works for me. But it's like a tyrant that it behaves like it's trying to protect me from, I can remember my mother telling me, don't get your hopes up because it might not work out. And it's rather than, I have come to believe that that's the most damaging and disempowering thing that anybody can ever say to themselves or another person.
Absolutely.
And I sort of cringe when I remember saying it to my own children, and I was always saying it from a place of wanting to protect them so that they didn't get hurt if it didn't work out. Instead of get your hopes up, take the steps toward your dream, because as you take those steps, even if you don't reach that particular dream, your life is going to get bigger and you're going to have a good time. But my mother, always wanting to protect me, would say, don't get your hopes up because it might not work out. And what I always heard was, it might not work out, so why bother?
Why bother, yeah.
And that is a classic example of programming or paradigm. I myself had a childhood. It was rough. I have changed my story. I used to say I was a victim of child abuse and domestic violence, and now I say I was blessed I was blessed to live that life, because if I hadn't lived that life, I would not have had the experiences that I had, and I would not have been inspired to give myself that gift when I was 34. Of thinking, of believing that thought that there's got to be a better way for me to live than this. I would never have been inspired to grow if I hadn't experienced the limitation that I had lived for so many years. So, but
it's great that you can see it as a gift.
Yeah.
That is amazing point of view, given what you've been through.
It's what I choose. And that's, I could choose to carry around the anger and the bitterness and the pain that I carried around for so long. The blame, the blame and the shame and all that stuff is heavy. So why not choose to? I have a personal belief that there's no such thing as a blessing in disguise, and I believe that everything is a blessing. And so blessings don't disguise themselves. They lay right out in the open, waiting for me to look for them.
Yep.
And so when I looked at my history that way, what would be the blessing? If I was looking for the blessing in that, what would I find? And that is what I found. Today, my life is so wonderful now. I'm married to the best man in the world for me. I have all these wonderful things, and I have grown so much, and now I get to help other people reach their dreams. That's huge. That's huge. And I would, if I had never been inspired to learn the things that I learned from Mary Morrissey, well, I'd be dead. There's no question. I would have died before the age of 40 if I had stayed in that relationship.
So, Sandi, tell us, what did you do to pop your paradigm? How did you make that shift from where you were to this wonderful life you have now?
Well, I learned the term from Mary, and those people listening who have never heard me tell my story before get used to hearing the name Mary. Because Mary Mannon Morrissey is my hero. I have learned so many life-giving principles from her, and really great tools that worked for me to apply to my life to change my life. I just love her. So I learned from her this term, and I had no idea as I was doing it that this was what I was doing until last year. I heard her come up with this term. She calls it the sword of truth, which is and it's perfect for my book, because the way I wrote about paradigm is that it's like the thumb of a tyrant that hangs out above me at all times. But the thing about programming is it has no substance. So it's really like a giant inflatable thumb that's completely poppable. Okay? So, and then I hear Mary talking about this sword of truth. I think not last January, but the January before is when I heard her talk about it. And she says the sword of truth is nothing more or less than a thought that's truth with a capital T, that cuts right through the programming, cuts right through the paradigm. And so that's how I wrote about it in my book. So I had various, what I look at now as swords of truth that I used during that time. The first one was at the very beginning. I was willing to believe that thought. That was the very first one. Was there's got to be a better way for me to live than this. And I didn't recognize that as truth with a capital T, because I knew nothing of God or higher power or universe with a capital U or infinite intelligence. What I knew about God was that God hated me and that God put me on this planet for me to be a victim and to suffer. And I hated God. And so during that summer of 1999, I started having that thought, there's got to be a better way for me to live than this. And I had versions of that thought before, like I wish there was a better way, it's just too bad there isn't, kind of thing.
You didn't believe it yourself. Yeah. So this time, the gift was the willingness to believe that thought. And how did you do that? How did you shift there into believing, to actually feel that in your body, that you believed that you could actually have a different way of living?
I don't know. Honestly, I don't know, because I had no idea what I was doing. I just knew that I don't know. I knew that I didn't deserve to be treated the way I was being treated, and I didn't deserve to be told you're not allowed to speak to your children. I wasn't allowed to talk to my kids the last 2 years I was with that particular man, and I knew I didn't, because he had his own programming, and he, the accusations would happen, and he would follow me around and deliberately see things that I wasn't doing, and accuse me of all these horrible things, and I just had enough, I think.
So you just reached that point where,
I was done because he was so irrational and very warped about how, and I knew that it was his own programming. One of the things he used to say to me, which I would never call somebody an animal. That is not something I would say. I would call him a different word that starts with an A. But I would. It's just not something I would call if I was in an argument with somebody. I would never say you're an animal, and we would be, in the middle of one of those horrible domestic violence altercations, and he would be very insistent that I'm not an animal, and I'm like, what are you talking about? I would never even say that because animals don't abuse each other, And so I could. It was like I started to see his programming and I found out later that his dad. Well, I knew that he had been abused as a child. I knew that, and he used that as his excuse to be the way he was. And that was part of my lesson, was because I used my childhood as an excuse to be a victim. My life is the way it is because I was abused as a child, and all I know how to be is a victim. And he said just the opposite. My life is the way it is because I was abused as a child, and all I know how to do is to abuse people. And so I did find out later from his mom that his dad, when he was beating him up as a child, would call him an animal.
Okay.
So, it was all paradigm. It was all paradigm.
All paradigm.
So to answer your question, I think I had just had enough. I had enough. There's got to be a better way for me to live than this because I am a good person. And I would never do any of the things that he so seems to want me to be doing so he can beat on me or, flatten me under his thumb kind of thing.
So once you got that new thought that there's got to be a better way, then you believed it, what else did you do to help pop your paradigm, to break that programming, that victim programming, because that was really strong from your childhood?
It was. Oh, my goodness, it was. After probably 5 or 6 weeks of there's got to be a better way for me to live in this. I don't know what it is, but I know there's got to be a better way, and I'm willing to see it when it shows up. It showed up in the form of Merry Men and Morrissey. And I turned on my TV on September 19th, 1999. It was a Sunday. It was 3:30 in the afternoon.
I love you remember that exact date and time. That's great.
That was when the whole way that I looked at my life changed when I heard what she had to say. I turned on my TV and landed on Oregon Public Broadcasting. I was in Portland at the time, just in time to hear her say that we all deserve to have our dreams come true. And my thought was, yeah, right. What? Look, a crazy person on Oregon Public Broadcasting. She actually seems to believe that. and I really thought she was nuts because I had my own life as proof that she was incorrect. But I couldn't. I was ready. I was ready to hear what she had to say. If I had found her a couple weeks prior to that, I probably wouldn't have heard a word of it. There are no accidents.
No, I agree with you on that.
Yeah. So I continued to listen to her, and shortly after she said that, she was quoting Lao Tse, and she said, "If you continue down the road you're on, you're going to end up where you're headed." And it was like there was a string in my back that pulled me upright because I had been all hunched, and curled up in the corner of my couch. And when she said that, I can totally remember sitting up straight when she said that because I could see where I was headed. If you continue down the road you're on, you're going to end up where you're headed. And I saw where I was headed. Oh, my God, I'm headed for the graveyard. I'm going to die at the hands of a man who constantly and repeatedly tells me that he loves me. And the thing that I saw in that was that my road was mine. It wasn't his road. He did not dictate my road.
That you had control.
That was the first time I ever really took responsibility. I don't care for the term take responsibility. That was the first time I ever was responsible and felt responsible for the way my life was, and responsible in a positive way, not in a guilt and blame and shame way, but just responsible for the choices I had made up to that point. And so she said that, and I saw where I was headed, and I went, oh my goodness, I don't want to end up there. And my paradigm immediately took me to, but U-turns don't work. You've already left him 6 times, and every single time he's brought you back, and you've gotten hurt worse. So U-turns don't work. So you're stuck. It's too bad. You're going to die. And so I had this little dialogue this icky dialogue going on inside my head for during it was like the TV paused while I had this paradigm stuff go on, and then the next thing she said was she put her hands together and facing out in front of her, and she moved her hands out from her chest, and she said, if you're going down the road and you see that you don't like where you're headed, just make a little shift in direction. And she angled her right hand out a little bit, and she kept moving her hands outward, and she said, just make a little shift in direction, angled her right hand out, and said, and a mile down the road, you're in a whole new place.
Wow.
And I could see what she meant. It was so clear to me that, God, I don't have to do a U-turn. It doesn't have to be like that. I can shift my direction while I'm here rather than having him threatening my children's lives if I leave, because that just added more stress. It was amazing. And the thing that I chose to start shifting my direction was peace begins with me. This was another thing that I heard her say. Peace begins with me. It comes from A Course in Miracles. Peace begins with me, and I can choose peace instead of this. I can choose peace. And so that was a big sword of truth for me. I used it for 9 months. Peace begins with me. I wasn't very good at it at first because the programming is so powerful. So I made the decision watching the show. It was called Building Your Dreams, and it was based on her book, Building Your Field of Dreams. And so I made the decision during the time that I was watching that show that that's what I'm going to do to shift my direction. When he's being that way with me, I don't have to go there with him. And I can choose peace if I want to. I can choose peace anytime because my own peace begins with me. He's not responsible for my peace. I am. And then, I probably forgot to do it because the programming is so powerful. The next time he decided to pick a fight with me, I was right there with him, living from habit. And 2 hours after, the 6-hour domestic violence marathon, then I would remember, and I would beat myself up. Because, dang it, I was going to choose peace, and I forgot. And I caught myself beating myself up every bit as much as he did. Because you're so dumb, you can't even hang on to one positive thought. You can't even like that voice. That voice is so powerful, and you don't even realize that's what it is. And so I first had to choose peace with regard to my own self, and that was the beginning of the real practice of my peace begins with me, and nothing outside of me has any power to take my peace away from me unless I allow it. And so I practiced that with myself because it continued that way. The altercation would happen. I would forget. And then after it was all over, I would be, dang it, I forgot again. And then it got to be where we would be 3/4 of the way through, and I would remember, oh, yeah. I'll never forget how that felt. Oh, yeah. You know what? Peace begins with me, and I don't have to do this with you. Oh, my goodness. I can choose peace instead of this. Thank you, God. You know, and that was how I was able to do it. That's the other half of that was I had to look at. I would have given up if I hadn't done this second half of that, which was thank you, universe, for giving me this opportunity to practice. Because
you discovered gratitude then.
Yes, it was so hard to do it. It was so hard to choose peace when I was getting beat up. It was very, I mean, you can imagine.
Yes.
I mean, you probably can't imagine if you've never been there. But to be cowered in the corner while somebody's pummeling me with his fists and repeating in my head, I can choose peace instead of this, and actually feel peaceful, thank you, universe, for giving me this opportunity to practice, was what kept me practicing. Because if I hadn't gone there, I would have given up. I would have given up. It's too hard to choose peace. That woman was crazy, and she didn't know what she was talking about. And I should have known. That it wouldn't work for me because things like that never do. And does that make sense?
Yep. So how long did you? I assume you went on to a next piece. How long did it take you to really start to chip away at your programming and make more direction in being yourself?
It took me 9 months, and I left him 3 more times. Wow. I left him a total of 10 times. And so it was 9 months. I found Mary on TV on September 19th of 1999, and during the next 9 months, I practiced peace. And I practiced, I bought her book. I paid $120 for that book because I did it to support Oregon Public Broadcasting. And I practiced the things that I found in there. Peace begins with me. I can choose peace instead of this. You do not have to let the petty acts of an unhappy individual damage you. That was big for me in that. I do not have to let his pettiness damage me. I don't have to let him convince me that I'm the piece of you-know-what that he says I am. I don't have to because I know I'm not. And my history doesn't determine my destiny. Just because I have this history doesn't mean that my destiny has to be a result of that. I can change. I can shift my life. And I carried her book with me everywhere I went. And I swear to God, I would be upset about something or find myself struggling, and I would automatically open her book at random, and I always landed on something that I found helpful that helped me to shift my perspective.
Wow.
And so it was mainly Peace Begins with Me, because that's like my core, my biggest sort of truth. The most powerful one for me is Peace Begins with Me, and I can always choose peace, always, no matter what's going on. And so I did that for 9 months, and I became more powerful in that relationship, and he became more violent. Because he didn't want to grow. He didn't want to grow and change, and his programming needed me to be reactive. His programming needed me to be afraid of him, and you know what I mean? And so he didn't know what to do with me when I wasn't reacting to his. Another thing that this one's all mine. I broke my buttons. That was how I looked at it. He would be poking like crazy at a particular button, expecting a certain reaction from me, and nope, what did I say? I short-circuited that button last week. It's not going to work for you anymore.
So your behavior actually, you modeled a behavior that shifted his paradigm too.
Well, if he had been willing to shift it, and he wasn't. He wasn't. because his self-esteem is so incredibly low. Well, and I could be wrong because that was 11 years ago. He may have changed. I left him 10 years ago this month.
But it did shift to what was going on between you.
Oh, yes. I became stronger, and he became angrier.
Mm.
And so by June of 2000, I knew if I didn't leave, I was going to be murdered.
Mm.
And he was going to be sorry after it was all over with.
Mm.
And I wasn't really willing to do that. And so
well, that's good.
Yeah. So on June 26th, the real adventure began, and I left him for the 10th and final time.
Mm.
I climbed on a Greyhound bus, and I had $80, a backpack, and a duffel bag, and I came to Arizona on the Greyhound bus.
Wow.
I didn't know a soul here. I had no job prospects. I had no place to stay. I spent my first night here at the bus station and was, pretty much homeless in Phoenix in the summertime, which, it was 60 degrees in Portland when I left, and it was 110 here.
Mm.
And so, but it was so, that whole experience was so incredible and amazing in a very positive way, because I really, the bus ride was a learning experience in itself, and, I just learned so much during that time because I was willing to, Mary calls it beginner's mind.
Mm.
Do your study with the beginner's mind, and I went, I had been carrying her book with me for 9 months at this point. And then when I was on the bus and completely changing my life, I was petrified. I was terrified. Being a woman alone, going to an unfamiliar, huge, hot, ugly city was how I was looking at it, not knowing that I was going to be spending, maybe possibly living at the Greyhound station for who knew how long. I was terrified. And so I went back into her book with what she calls the beginner's mind.
Mm.
And
tell us about that. How can people think about the beginner's mind?
As I do this, and what's something that I haven't tried applying or that I haven't applied in a very big way that I can apply in a big way at this point, because I need that now if I'm going to be able to make it.
Mm.
And I found it. It was amazing. There were several things that I used. William Shakespeare said, "Our doubts are traitors and make us lose the good we oft might win by fearing to attempt." And it was that quote that got me on the bus in the first place. I used that one, and I still do. I used that one right hand in hand with Martin Luther King said, "Take the first step in faith. You don't have to see the whole staircase. Just take the first step."
Take the first step.
And when I climbed up the steps of that bus, I was reciting that particular quote out loud. You don't have to see the whole staircase. Just take the first step. I knew I was doing the right thing. I knew that I had been practicing. There's the paradigm. There's that tyrant voice, the voice that says you're a piece of crap and nobody's ever gonna love you, and men are not nice people, only use different words. You're worthless. You don't deserve to be happy. I had all that self-talk that had gone on in my mind for 35 years. But with the use of the things that I learned from Mary, I had begun to be familiar with the other voice, because there's another one. And that I could love to call, I just recently started calling it, or saying to people, listen to the voice that loves you.
Mm.
And I had started really listening to that voice and hearing it. Gandhi called it the voice for truth, voice for God, higher power. Call it whatever you want. I like to call it the voice that loves me.
Mm.
because I have a good time with that. Do I want to listen to the voice of the paradigm, or do I want to listen to the voice that loves me?
So you actually discovered how to listen to your heart, really, or your inner voice, as you said, or the higher power. So you were getting messages from a different place than your programming.
Yes, very much so.
How did that shift then? What you did?
Well, oh God. You want the whole story?
Well, part of it is using that ability to listen to your inner heart, and I just want to think about how that would help people who are listening here. How can they do that, and how can that shift from their programming by doing that?
One of the things that was incredibly, incredibly powerful during that experience was I had begun asking bigger questions of myself.
Ooh, okay.
And I had been practicing listening to that voice that loves me and ignoring the one that wanted me to stay small and not succeed. And then there's the quote unquote coincidence. I don't believe there's any such thing as coincidence. I absolutely believe that everything happens for a reason. Because it's in alignment with whatever's going on.
Absolutely.
And when I climbed up the steps of that bus, I happened to sit down next to the person that I was supposed to be sitting next to. And I was terrified. I was terrified of leaving the Pacific Northwest. I grew up there. And it's magnificent, and it's beautiful, and it's home. And here I am feeling forced to leave because I was fully as I sat on that bus, because of some things, it was like everything that could happen to look like a problem did. And the third quote, tool, sort of truth, whatever you want to call it, that I used during that time was Albert Einstein said, the significant problems we face cannot be solved at the level of thinking that created them. And I had really been practicing solution-level thinking. Okay, I'm feeling like this problem is bigger than me. What if I was bigger than the problem? What would I see if I was bigger than the problem?
Oh, I like that.
And that it was fun. And all of this can be fun if you allow it to be, even though it's incredibly uncomfortable. But during that bus ride, I was angry because I felt like I had been forced to leave. I'm leaving my children behind, even though, I hadn't been allowed to talk to them in 2 years. And I did find that when I got here, I have wonderful relationships with my children now because even though it was long-distance communication, it was communication, which wasn't happening when I was in Portland. So I know my children now. It's wonderful. So I'm on the bus, and I'm terrified, and I'm angry that I'm leaving the beauty of the Pacific Northwest, and I'm headed for Arizona, which is brown and ugly and big and hot. and that was what I was very focused on. I'm leaving the beauty, and I'm going to the ugly. And I'm gonna make myself make it. And so that was my angry attitude. And so that was what I was seeing as I was looking out the window, as this bus is driving down I-5, headed toward California. I was seeing the green go bye-bye and knowing that I might never see green like this again, because I had no idea what was going to happen to me. And I might never see this green again. And I was crying and crying and crying, and it wasn't a healthy crying. It was a draining crying. It wasn't healthy or cathartic at all. It was just pitiful. And so, but there's this young lady. Her name was Cynthia, and I thought she was about 17. And so she's sitting in the seat next to me, bouncing up and down in her seat, and saying over and over again, I can't wait to get away from all this green. And I wanted to strangle her because she was so annoying, because she was so happy. And it was like, I can remember looking at her and really thinking that she was a teenager and saying to myself, stay happy while you can, because it's too bad that life is going to happen to you at some point, and that happy-go-lucky little attitude of yours is going to be wiped out.
Mm.
And I remember thinking those kinds of thoughts about her while being annoyed that she was
the old programming coming up here.
Oh yes. And I was just annoyed that why did you have to pick this seat to sit in? I'm not interested in being happy along with you. So, and I did that for a while. I was, I'm looking out the window, seeing the green go away. She grew up in L.A. And she had just spent the previous 2 weeks in Seattle, and it's very green in Seattle. It's greener in Seattle than it is in Portland, and she had been overwhelmed by this green, and so she really was excited to get away from the green. And having lived in Arizona for 10 years now and gone back to visit Portland, I completely understand. I completely understand what she was saying. And
Sandi, I'm going to stop because we are running a little late, and I did want you to talk more. I think this is an amazing story, and we could keep going on. But you talked about 3 swords of truth, and I want to just go back over them for people so that they can get them, and if you want to add more of how people can actually get started on doing this from themselves. So you started with the whole piece with begins with me and the sword of truth and really choosing peace. And then you talked about listening to the inner voice as number 2, would really the voice that loves you, and asking the bigger questions and really living from that place. And then also solution-level thinking. I really like that, and so being able to see that you are bigger than the problem. So how did those 3 things then really translate, and what were some of the things that you also could tell people that they could do to get started?
I think the main thing is being willing to hear past the voice that wants to keep you limited. Because if you know it's there, the first thing is recognizing it. The very first thing is recognizing, oh, look what I'm doing to myself right now with my thoughts. And I have come to believe over the years that the way my life is right now is a direct result of my habits of thought. Mm-hmm. And the way my life was the day I climbed on that bus was a direct result of my habits of thought. Mm. And it was during that time that I changed my habits of thought. And that was really where I was going with that story. Okay. I decided to see something different when I looked out that window.
Okay. From the
so, just
desert, from the green to the desert was it?
Mm-hmm. So what if I looked for beauty? What would happen? That was the bigger question. Okay. What would happen if I looked out this window with the intention of seeing beauty? And when I did that, I found it. Mm. So it's all a matter of how we look at things, every bit of it. But, what I believe determines what I perceive. So what I believe, the subconscious programming, the paradigm, determines what I perceive. Mm-hmm. What I perceive determines how I behave. And my behavior provides me always with the results that serve as proof that my paradigm is right.
Can you repeat that again? I really like that. What I believe?
What I believe determines what I perceive. And what I perceive determines how I behave. And my behavior provides me with the proof that what my paradigm says is true is actually true. Mm. And as I was looking out that window, I made a decision to change my behavior, because that's change your behavior. So what would my behavior be? Basically, what would my behavior be if I chose to see something other than what I'm seeing? There are almost 7 billion people on this planet. which means that there are almost 7 billion different ways of looking at things. So if I was a person that believed that Arizona could be beautiful, what would I see? And I have found that. It's been amazing. And so that is a key, is to recognize when, okay, I feel icky right now. What's my programming wanting me to be convinced of? And paradigms can be positive or negative, and you can shift the negative ones to something more positive. And that's exactly what I did. I taught myself how to look at things differently. What would I be seeing if I'm having trouble with money? What would I be seeing if I was looking through the eyes of a wealthy person? If I'm having trouble in my relationship, what would I be seeing if I was looking through the eyes of a person who can love unconditionally and not make another person responsible for how I feel? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I think that's just the changing how you see things can really make that shift. And that's, I can actually see the image of popping the paradigm, the balloon just collapsing by doing that.
Yes. And the thing about it is the paradigm doesn't stay popped. You have to do it over and over and over again until you prove to it that, hello, I'm more powerful than you are. And the second, you can feel it. You can feel it when you get there. Because after that, it starts losing. It tries to come back, and then it's like it gives up instead of me giving up. But sometimes it's a process, and you have to be willing to do the work. And that is where probably I don't know, all of this stuff works beautifully for me, but the thank you, universe, for giving me this opportunity to practice, I live there. That's where I live, because I'm circumstances are they can be, I don't know, painful if I allow them to. If I allow my circumstances to give me problems, then I'm going to experience problems. But if I can stand in my circumstances and be powerful enough to say, oh, look, another opportunity to practice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That is great and very powerful when you get to that point. I want to just give the audience an opportunity to ask you any questions. So at this point, we're just going to stop, and if anyone wants to ask a question, it's 5* on your phone, and I will unmute you so you can ask a question. Yep. Doesn't appear like we have anyone who wants to ask a question. So I also wanted to ask you more about your practice. So at this point in, Sandi, because you've talked so much about some really terrific ways of popping your paradigm and shifting into unlimited thinking and getting out of your programming. But tell us more about what you do and what your work is, and some of the things that may be coming up that people will be interested in.
Well, obviously there's the book. Actually, there's both books. They're available on my website. Pop Your Paradigm is available through Barnes & Noble and Borders and Amazon, and through my publisher, which is inkwellproductions.com. And so there's that. And I love speaking on this subject because I'm very passionate about it.
Yes.
Because I know it works. I know, and I have the many examples of how I've used it to shift things in my life. And so there's that, and then there's the Life Mastery Consulting. I love the Dream Builder program. I love that because I used Building Your Field of Dreams all by myself with no guidance from anybody except that voice that loves me. And now I'm certified to teach that material, and it's this whole awesome, wonderful program. with Mary's voice, which is without question a voice that loves everyone. So there's the 17 CDs and the workbook, and it's an 11-week program, and I get to walk people through that, the experience of shifting something that wants to keep them limited, and I love watching people step forward into their dreams. That is, like, I swear, my favorite thing to do is to watch somebody pop their paradigm and go, oh my God, I did it! That's so cool, and actually take steps to. I've watched people quit their job and step, and go through the paradigm stuff and then come out on the other side in a way bigger life than anything they ever could have experienced if they had stayed in the job in which they were unhappy.
Mm-hmm.
I have clients now who have done that, and for the people who when I started doing this, I had no idea how to dream. I didn't have a clue because I had never believed that anything I dreamed of would come true. So
it's
dreamer
something people need to learn, absolutely. So they need help in being able to do it because we don't know how to do it. We haven't been taught that. It's not part of our paradigm.
Right. And so now I am one woman in particular. I just adore her, and I'm watching her. When she started the program, she had no idea. She, her dream was a clean house, and now I could go on and on about this. She's making some real shifts in the way she lives her life and in how she looks at things, and she's starting to really, really think outside the box and go bigger and take those. And her life is expanding around her. It's amazing, and I love being a part of that.
Oh, it is great to watch. Absolutely.
That's like my favorite thing to do is because I have a gift.
Yes.
And I'm willing to own that. I have a gift for helping people, for holding people in their vision and believing for them when they have a hard time believing for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so they can how do I say this? Well, we'll just leave it at that. I'm very good at that, and it's my favorite thing to do is to hold someone's dream in my heart for them and watch them walk toward it. It's awesome. So I'm starting another one. It's an 11-week coaching, and the next one is starting on July 7th. It's 11-week coaching, $1,100, but right now I'm offering 25% off.
Great.
If people get signed up before the 10th, it's 25% off. The cutoff date for signing up at all is June 16th because I need time to get the materials and get it sent to my clients. So, but I'm really looking forward to it. So, if you're interested,
it's a teleclass. It's done on the phone, Sandi.
Yes, it's on the phone. So it doesn't matter where you are in the world, and the coaching will be recorded and available to go back and listen to, and I'm really looking forward to it. So those who are interested, please go to my website at chooseyouruniverse.com, and the information is there. Just either call or email me, and we'll get you started. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a blast. So anybody who's ready to expand into the life they really would like to be living, come and play with me. Come and play with me and start walking towards your dream.
That's terrific, Sandi. I do want to take a minute to really thank you for, the description that you talked about, so willing to talk about your own life and what you've been through and to be that open and authentic. It takes tremendous courage and very generous for you to share with us all tonight. So I do want to just recognize that in you and that you have been able to really give us a gift here tonight, to be able to have this experience and understand how you went through this process, and give us some tips on how people can do that for themselves. So do you have any final thoughts for people before we close?
Go for your dreams, because you wouldn't be able to dream it if you weren't meant to live it. I mean, really, it wouldn't be possible for you to dream the dream that you're dreaming if you were not meant to move toward it and into it. And that's huge. That's huge. So it's been my pleasure. I love talking to you. So I'll just return that thanks. Thank you for having me, because I always enjoy these conversations.
Yes, and always great, Sandi. Thank you. So I want to leave one more opportunity for people to ask questions before we wrap up here. It's, again, 5-star on your phone. Anybody else want to or have a comment for Sandi at this point, or a question? Oh, okay. We have a quiet group tonight. Just wanted to check in. So I also want to thank the participants we have today, the people who are listening in, and thank you for being here tonight and joining us on the Lightbeam Hour, and being here for this amazing conversation with Sandi and to experience what we've gone through. And I hope that you, if you are inspired to certainly to get in touch with her, you can go directly to her website or go through the lightbeamacademy.com/chooseyouruniverse. And we would love to also have you consider going to the school, so lightbeamacademy.com, if you would like to check that out and potentially join. This recording will be there, and also Sandi's a link to Sandi's book and some of the other things that she'll be doing in the future. She's going to be one of our teachers at the Academy, so we're very excited about that. And I also want to just let people know about our next session. Our next session is going to be with on June 23rd. Again, at the same time, it's 4 o'clock Pacific time, about 7 o'clock Eastern time. And my guest then is going to be Tara Crawford Roth, and she is an intuitive and intuitive coach and a spiritual catalyst. Fascinating woman, really operates from a very high-level spiritual intuitive abilities, and fascinating to listen to, and she's going to give us some hints on how to develop that ability in yourselves. So I'll look forward to people joining us at that point, and having you come back again to the Lightbeam Hour. And once again, Sandi, thank you so much. You were an amazing guest and an incredible woman, and I'm so glad to have you in my life. So take care now.
Thank you. It's my pleasure, and I enjoy you every bit as much.
Oh, thank you. And good night, everyone. Bye-bye.
Good night.
To get more information, please go to lightbeamacademy.com/chooseyouruniverse. That's lightbeamacademy.com/chooseyouruniverse. Thank you.